All right, so can everyone see? I am going to send you this presentation when we get done, but I'll send it to you at one time instead of sending you bits and pieces throughout the whole thing. So
that way we can watch it over and over.
Yeah. And if you want to keep repeating it on your own, you can repeat it as many times as you want. So we're just going to kind of talk about Longana and Brahmana a bit tonight, and then talk about a few things that you can do on as yoga snacks, and then we'll get into our practice. So this is another model. This is a model of the 3 pillars of physiological health. And so it's considered like your body budget, if you want to think of it that way. And so optimal health is when you're at a level of homeostasis for internal balance. And the 3 main factors or contributors to that internal balance and physiological health are stress, sleep, and your energy levels. And so stress is a big one. That's what we're really focusing on. And sleep is very important. The idea is that these are all interconnected. So if you have high stress, your energy levels are going to be affected. If you don't sleep, your energy levels are going to be affected, and vice versa. Like, they're all interconnected. Okay. So these 3 pillars are your body budget, like I mentioned. The idea of interoception did not evolve for you to have feelings, but instead it's to regulate your body budget. It helps your brain track your temperature, how much glucose you're using, whether you have any tissue damage, whether your heart's pounding, whether your muscles are stretching, and other bodily conditions all at the same time. So your affective feelings of pleasure and displeasure and calmness and agitation are simple summaries of your budgetary state. That's a quote. This came from a physiological model. So the idea is that your own ability to look inward and the way you feel is a reflection of what's happening internally. So at any point in time, you can have a picture of your internal balance if you stop and pay attention. So there's actually a lot of power in your own sort of intuition and what you allow yourself to feel if you slow down and actually pay attention to it. And so in your practices, I've noted, and we've mentioned a little bit, the ideas of Brahmana and Longana. And so this is just a model that you can look at in more detail when I send it to you later, but it's kind of funny at an angle. But the idea is that Brahmana practices help to build and nourish your system. And Longana practices are used to eliminate and reduce. And so these are energetic qualities. And you first have to meet yourself where you are. So in the practice that we're doing, we're starting with the Brahmana practice because most of us are coming in an aroused state. And then we're bringing you down to a more calm state. That calm state is what you're using to eliminate and reduce stress. And so when you're at work all day, or when you're at home with screaming kids, or whatever it is that's causing you stress, it can be something that's totally just in your head, that's not an external stimulation. You have to meet yourself where you're at first. So if you're like really stressed out and really kind of agitated or hyped up, if you just immediately go to your pranayama practice, it's probably not going to feel that good to you. Where if you start with a more Brahmana practice and then bring it down to Longana, you'll get a greater effect from it. So that's essentially what that diagram is kind of showing you. That Longana practices will help to bring you from agitation to a more positive place, and Brahmana practices help to bring you from a more depressed state to a more positive state. So you can use these principles in just a normal yoga practice, but they're used more in therapeutic practices like what we're doing. But that's not to say that you can't use them in a general yoga practice. So throughout the day, like if you were going to teach or go to or have a morning yoga practice right out of bed, you would want something that was more Brahmana, versus if you were getting ready to go to bed and you were doing a yoga practice right before bed, you'd want a more Longana practice. Okay. And so this I just threw in here so that when you go home and if you're trying to think about this, you'll have an idea of what is Brahmana versus what is Longana. So back bends and axial extension postures, lengthening your inhale, adding a short pause at the end of your inhale, those are all Brahmana practices. Where Longana practices are lengthening your exhale, adding a short pause at the end of your exhale, it's forward bends and it's twists. But in a therapeutic practice, your breath is going to be much more effective than postures. And this is kind of where we go into doing things throughout the day when you may not be able to do a full practice like what we've been doing. But the idea is that you first have to get into your body. So you have to take a moment, and this can be done in a matter of a few seconds, so it doesn't have to be a long practice by any means. And this is kind of what your yoga snacks are. Like, if you just slow down, take a couple deep breaths, and allow yourself to really feel what's happening in your body. So feel if you have an area that you're holding tension. Feel if your neck is tight, if your shoulders are tight, if your back is tight. Notice if you're gripping your toes, if you're gripping your jaw, if you're gripping your fists, or anything like that. Notice if your heart rate is sped up. Notice if you're sweating, if your stomach feels like it's in knots. Like, you first just slow down and let yourself look inward and feel what you're feeling. And you have to embody what you're feeling. So meet yourself where you're at. If you have an area that you're holding physical tension, that's what you want to try and gently stretch. And it can be something as simple as neck rolls or lifting your shoulders and dropping them, doing shoulder rolls, like things that don't necessarily look like you're doing yoga, but you could do sitting at a desk, you could do in a meeting, you could do in front of your kids, like. And then you'll get more benefit out of doing a short breathing practice. So even a breathing practice that's as simple as slowing your exhale down, making your exhale 1 or 2 seconds longer than your inhale, is going to be a Longana practice, which is going to help to bring your system back into a state of balance when it's aroused. Does that make sense? So that's the idea of Brahmana and Longana in a very quick summary. So that's what we've been essentially trying to do, is stick with a practice that was hopefully easy for you guys to do and follow, and incorporate the power of changing your thoughts. So the Brahmana Longana model you can use with the breathing practices and with the asana. But then when we start to add in cognitive reframing, so changing your thought patterns from a negative place to a positive place, then all of this becomes much more powerful. Any questions on that?
And on the tongue in this last week, some things that are not all that crisis bound, but like going to the Feast of the Hunter's Moon, and it takes a long time to put on clothes that you only do once a year, and so like you build up this kind of stress, and then I realized that I could be late. It was okay if I was late. The world didn't stop if I got there 10 minutes late. So it's helpful in that regard, and just kind of reframing the urgency of your world, or and how to adjust.
Any other questions or comments, or before I turn this off?
So does that mean how about arms? When you move your arms upward, is that more of a Brahmana thing versus having your, does that make a difference?
It can. That would be more Brahmana if you're lengthening your spine. So axial extension is when you're lengthening your spine, and most of the time when you're reaching your arms up, like you're elongating your spine, which is the Brahmana effect.
So even like in child's pose, is there a difference between having your arms overhead versus by your heels?
Not necessarily, unless you're doing something with the breath. You can make child's pose either Brahmana or Langana, depending upon how you're changing that breath ratio. So if you're in a child's pose, if you're lengthening your inhale or adding a short pause after your inhale, then it's going to be a Brahmana. But a child's pose is naturally, it's a forward bend, so it's naturally a Langana posture. Any other questions?
I'm trying to think about classes that we've taken. Do we do a combination of both in most classes, or do you start with some?
When you take a normal group yoga class, this probably isn't really being programmed into it. That's where I was saying that it's used more in a therapeutic application. This can absolutely be programmed into a normal group class, but it's probably not in the regular classes that you're going to. It's probably there. I mean, these are energetic qualities, so they're going to be there based on what postures the teacher picks, but they may not necessarily be in any kind of order or specific position.
Well, and they might be in certain places based on the sequence of events in a yoga class, right? Like your Brahmana stuff tends to be more in the middle, standing and more energetic.
Usually. Yeah. Usually in a normal group class, it's going to end up being pretty balanced, because you're going to end up in the hour doing a combination of both.
Seems like the Langana is what we do to warm up to get into it, and what we do to cool down to come out of it. And some of it maybe in the slow flow or whatever, because we end up doing standing things midway.
Don't get too pigeonholed in trying to understand it. Like, I know.
See, you got all your instructors around you. They're all changing their classes next week.
I know. I mean, a standing posture isn't always going to be a Brahmana posture. A lot of times it is, but it isn't always. So it's a standing forward fold is the Longana posture that you'll do in the middle of class normally. So you kind of have to look at the effects cumulatively. Like, you could go through each posture and say, that's Brahmana, that's Longana, that's Brahmana, that's Longana, but you have to look at, in the whole class, what's the energetic effect of what you're doing. So the practice that we're doing in here is a Samana practice, which means that it's balanced. We're starting with more Brahmana and we're ending with more Longana. So when you leave, you should be in a pretty good frame of mind, feeling pretty calm and balanced. Anything else?
I wonder if depending upon what your state is when you come into a class, whether you respond more to whichever on that one day than you do on another day.
Yeah, that's absolutely. So when you really start to study the energetics of a yoga practice, like nothing is ever constant. So these are kind of, well, these are very general assumptions that we're making, but some people can respond in the complete opposite manner. So for some people, for most people, back bends are kind of energizing and uplifting, and there's a few people that back bends do the complete opposite. So that's why this is used more in a therapeutic application, because therapeutic applications are done in much more intimate settings where you can actually discuss what people are feeling after doing something. Versus in a group yoga class, the teacher has no idea what people are coming in the door with. So they can make some general assumptions and hope that most people get the benefit that they're trying to teach, but you can't assume. Like, that's not going to be what everyone experiences. There's not any thing that's going to force someone to have an experience that most people have. And so if you do one of these things, or you breathe the opposite way, or maybe you feel a little backwards of what I'm saying, like, that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just something for you to notice and pay attention to. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay, we're gonna start our practice. So when it comes to little yoga snacks and what's going to be most effective, that's something that on some level needs to be a personal exploration of what feels the best and most nourishing for you. So in all reality, like, you're not going to be doing an hour-long practice like this, or even a half an hour practice throughout the middle of your day. But you want to be able to pay attention to where you're holding stress and how it's manifesting, and then use little discrete techniques to help to counterbalance that. So if you feel your neck tensing up, do something to release your neck and then take some deep breaths. If you feel your back tensing up, do something to stretch your back and take some deep breaths. It can be as simple as that. if you feel your mind going all over the place, you have to make a conscious decision to pull your mind back to a positive place. And that is more work than stretching out your neck or stretching out your back in all reality. But it's something, and that's something that you're not necessarily going to learn to do in 8 weeks. That's something that's going to take practice and years, and probably realistically always be a conversation that you're having in your own mind. So tonight we're going to lengthen it. We're going to make our chant a little longer. How'd you guys feel? Did any of you go home and chant after last week?
Not a chance. We walk around going, yum, yum.
Well, now you're going to say Om Yam Namaha. Okay. And of course, it's optional. So if anyone is like really opposed to chanting for whatever reason,
For whatever reason.
so adding Om and Namaha before, so we talked about Yam last week as the heart chakra bija sound. So adding Om and Namaha to it is making it more of a personal declaration, if that makes sense. So you're saying that you're embodying and accepting with grace this work that you're doing related to your fourth chakra in a really high level. So it's not, again, it's not that we're translating the words verbatim, like it's more just what the meaning overall means. And you're just trying to feel what it feels like to you. If you want to chant something totally different, you can chant something totally different and feel the vibration and just see how it resonates with your system. So chanting was also used as a way of pacing asana. So you may notice that it's a lot harder to breathe and chant at the same time, or breathe and talk at the same time. So chanting and pacing the chants was a way that you were forced to slow your asana down. So now we're going to be lengthening the chant. So your exhales may become a little bit longer, but you may need to just chant a little faster. That makes sense. I told Lisa and Lori, because they were here first, that they had to chant louder so that everyone feels comfortable being loud.
So if you hear sounds of crackling voices and, croaking, whatever, just ignore it.
Katie will do it too. Katie likes chanting. You can be loud.
I do love chanting, but I just don't want to be the first one because I'm like, you can hear my terrible. It's like singing a little bit, and it's just not my strong. We should all stand together like in a little cluster.
I know, we get close to
You're not going to be the first one because I'm saying it first.
That's right.
Okay. So you're just going to find a tall spine, find a comfortable seat, and then close your eyes. Let your arms relax down by your side. And just take a moment and begin to settle in. Just begin to let go of any distractions that are outside, as well as any distractions that are internal. So just take a moment and see if you can feel your own internal budget. Noticing what your stress level is right now, noticing what your energy level is right now. Reflecting on the quality of your sleep in general. And notice how your breath feels first without changing it too much. And then you gradually begin to deepen your breath, finding a 3-part breath, which means as you inhale, you'll allow your chest, your ribs, and your belly to expand. And then as you exhale, you pull your belly in. You pull your ribs down and you let your chest and your shoulders drop down. And so take your time, allowing your breath to deepen until you find a depth of breath that you can maintain without creating a sense of unease or a sense of distress. And this becomes the breath that will guide your practice. And it becomes the breath that's a resting place for your mind. So if you feel your mind starting to wander or move, you keep pulling it back to the sound and back to the feel of your breath. And so over time, you're beginning to develop an intimate relationship with your breath. Recognizing how your breath becomes a reflection of what's happening internally, but also allowing yourself to become empowered. Empowered in knowing that you can change what's happening physiologically in your system by changing your breath and using your breath to create change. And so in just a few moments, we'll begin to start our chant. But we're using our chant as a way to make our own internal declaration of our commitment to changing our own thought patterns and to helping to create change in our system in ways that we need change. And we start that change from our heart. So the chant is Om Yam Namaha. So we'll take a deep breath in. Om Yam Namaha. 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 And then just take a moment and sit with the vibration. Allow it to resonate deep into your heart space. And then when you're ready, you're going to come down onto your back. You'll bend your knees and bring your feet flat onto the floor. Just let your arms relax by your side. You'll keep your arms down by your side at first, and then in a few moments we'll start to move your arms. So as you inhale, you're going to press into your feet and lift your hips. And then as you exhale, you roll down, articulating your spine. As you inhale, you'll press into your feet and lift your hips. And as you exhale, you roll down, imprinting. You'll do that one more time. You'll take an inhale and lift your hips. And then as you exhale, you'll roll down. And then you'll start to lift, alternating arms. As you inhale, you'll lift your hips and you'll reach your right arm overhead. As you exhale, you'll bring your hips down as you bring your arm back down by your side. As you inhale, you'll lift your hips and lift your left arm. And as you exhale, you roll down. And you'll repeat that 2 more times each way. And then once you're even between both sides, and then you'll pause at the bottom and just take a moment and allow yourself to feel the energetic effect. Notice if you feel a bit more stimulation or nourishment. And then when you're ready, you're going to come over to standing on your knees. And we'll do a few without the chant, and then we'll add the chants. So we won't be doing the Shitali breath here this week. Unless you think you can do that on your inhale and chant on your exhale. Okay, so we'll do a few first without the chant. Arms behind your back. You'll take an inhale and reach your arms up. And then as you exhale, you'll pull your belly in. You'll send your hips back, sweeping your arms back. Let your head relax. And then you'll take an inhale, squeeze your shoulder blades together. Sweep your arms out, up and overhead as you rise up. As you exhale, pull your belly in, send your hips back, sweep your arms back. You'll do that one more time, then we'll add the chant on our exhale. So then you'll take an inhale and sweep up. Om Yam Namaha. Om